Hey, real quick, y'all. This video isn't meant to be data centric, meaning I'm not going to be debunking the information here. What I'm trying to do is offer you a framework of how to think these matters through so that it would equip you, empower you when you come across some questionable information or a meme or a video or news article, whatever it may be. You have a framework in how to analyze these different things properly in a way to where you don't get caught up in the emotion of the article or the emotion of the video or how things sound. That it would cause you to want to examine things on a much deeper level. So take that into consideration as you watch the rest of this video. Thanks. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Eric Moser here with Cobra Conversations. Thanks for joining me. In my video today, I wanted to share a meme that was shared by my favorite comedian, and I say that with the highest amount of sarcasm, Trevor Noah, on Instagram, and was brought to you by my favorite social justice warrior, and I say that with a lot of sarcasm as well, Deray McKesson. Now, I'm not sure if if these are legit quotes from him, but based on the content that he has put out there that I'm familiar with, I wouldn't be shocked at all. But before we jump into this video, the full content, if you appreciate videos that help you better understand the police use of force and all things related to policing or the current push for police reform, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of my future content. If you love and support what we do here at Code Red Conversations, make sure you hit up the coderedconversations.com, our official website. Go to the shop, buy some of our t-shirts and swag and merchandise so you can help us fund what it is that we're trying to do here. So let's jump right in, shall we? I found this quite interesting, to say the least. So I had to repost it. The meme goes... The first section of the meme is a third of the people killed by a stranger in this country are actually killed by a police officer. 1 in 11 homicides in California is committed by a police officer. This is a big deal. I'll read the whole thing. Black people are more likely to be unarmed and not threatening somebody than any other person who encounters the police in a violent situation. People don't know this stuff. So we want to lay it bare so people can't perpetuate myths about the movement. And I think he's talking about this whole current anti-police. Well, they may not put it like that. They may say this current social justice movement, BLM, all these entities that have a similar movement that are talking about police reform, et cetera, et cetera. So let's dissect this content to a degree. Now, we're not going to go point by point through everything that they said here. But I want to help those folks out there, those of you who know that there's something problematic about this post, but may not know exactly what to say if presented with this kind of information. So the first thing I want you to do is just listen to what's being said. A third of the people killed by a stranger in this country are actually killed by a police officer. Now, the first question we need to ask is, how many people have been killed in this country, let's just say over the last year? And then how many people are actually, what is the percentage of those who are killed in this country who are killed by strangers? Those are the first two questions. So you want to see if this claim is even accurate from the get-go, from its very foundation. The next question I would ask is, and I always say this, so this should not come as a surprise to anybody who's even remotely familiar with my content, is if what you're saying is true, what were the details of the situation that led to the police officer taking the life of these people? We understand that if anyone's even remotely familiar with the amount of shootings that the police have each and every year, it is estimated that the police kill about 1,000 people every year. 1,000 people. Now, I know at face value, those of you who may hear that number initially, that number may come as a shock and may be alarming. But what I ask you to do is examine the information, to examine the number of cops we have here in this country, and the number of calls for service, and the number of contacts that they have with the public, and the number of arrests. First and foremost, there was a study done, I believe it was in 2006 or between 2006, maybe 2009. And Heather McDonald of the Manhattan Institute spoke of it. She gave reference to it. That talked about the number of calls for service that the police have each and every year. Long story short, I'll put the link below in the comments or in the description so that you can have that information. So you can do the research on your own. When all the numbers were tallied, it was estimated that the police make or conduct somewhere in the neighborhood of 375 million contacts with citizens each and every year. Let me repeat that number: 375 million contacts each and every year. And this is estimated years ago. Well, as we have an increase in population, not mentioning the fact that we have growing violence, ever increasing violence in our nation. And it has also been estimated that the police conduct 11 million arrests every year. And let me add this: the fact that there are anywhere between 500,000 to 2 million cops in the United States. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was a study done by the Justice Department and various other sources. If I'm wrong, I'll put the exact details in the description as well below. But 500,000 to 2 million cops, 11 million arrests annually, nearly 500 million contacts with citizens each and every year. So let's frame when we hear information like this, let's make sure we have perspective. We have a proper perspective. And unfortunately, people like this who profit off of keeping people angry and upset and fearful of the police, they won't give you the full story. So that's where I come into play. That's where people like me come into play. Our mindset is, yes, we understand that there are some cops who do bad things. We understand that policing can always improve. But we give you a fuller perspective. We help you to say, hey, you know what? There's probably more going on here than meets the eye. And if you think that, you're a rational human being. You're not a fool. And there's nothing wrong with asking that question. So let's have that as our foundation. And I think once we have that, everything else changes. Everything else changes. So let's move on. Black people are more likely to be unarmed and not threatening somebody than any other person who encounters the police in a violent situation. Once again, I'm not exactly sure if this is completely accurate, but more likely could be 1.1 times more likely than a white person or a Hispanic person or whatever. That percentage could be, more likely. What does that even mean? Are you talking about 10 times more likely, 20 times more likely, or 1.1 time more likely, or 1.5 times more likely? The numbers can be so negligible, can be so small that they're basically meaningless. But again, you have no solid data. He doesn't give you anything. He may have went into more detail when this information was passed on. That's quite possibly true. I highly doubt it. And they know this, and they know it's inflammatory when people hear this. They respond, man, oh man, what's going on? So my point is always just make sure you're fully knowledgeable, fully educated, fully informed. And you have to be willing to do the homework, your homework. You have to be willing to do the research. I tell my kids that all the time. The one who reads the least, studies the least, is the one who is more likely to be fooled. You have to be willing to educate yourself in a society that promotes cancel culture. You have to be willing to you have to be willing to educate yourself in a society where propaganda is being spun from certain political parties, certain political positions, where they want you to believe a certain way, where you have social media that blocks and stifles information that goes against their chosen platform. Unfortunately, most people aren't willing to do that work, and that's really sad. But I think that's just the history. That's just the nature of man at times. We want to be spoon-fed. We're not willing to say, hey, let me take some time and read a book. Let me take some time and do my own research off of Google, maybe going 10 pages deep or going to DuckDuckGo or using your Brave browser as opposed to Google, and seeing if there are other sources of data that may conflict, and understanding that that's not necessarily a bad thing. And if there is an issue that involves where a Black person is more likely to be shot or when they're unarmed and not threatening, then we need to examine that. We need to be open and honest enough to say, hey, is there an issue? But again, that's a conversation for another day. And finally, on this point, he says, please, people don't know this stuff. So we want to lay it bare so people can't perpetuate myths about the movement. Well, the reality is BLM and the like are notorious for perpetuating myths. Just throughout their history, false information is the foundation by which these people grow and spread their propaganda and spread their lies, and are able to make tens or hundreds of millions of dollars via false information. At the very core of it all is this mindset that there's an epidemic of police shootings with Blacks. That's one of their foundational beliefs. And just going by the information that I shared with y'all today, that's garbage. That is total trash nonsense. And there is no factual basis to make a claim like that. It's just not reality. These people want to fundamentally change our society. They want to change our culture. And they have, many of them have a godless perspective, not the God of the Bible, no question about that. So from their perspective, many of them, not all of them, but many of them, why not lie? Why not promote a false narrative in order to get people riled up so that they act on our behalf? I speak out on these things for one, because it's a lie, and two, but the way they twist the data is causing people to hate police. Therefore, the idea of saying you want to defund them, which ultimately causes more harm than good in any society, especially towards those people, towards Black folks, towards Hispanic folks, the ones that they profess to care so much about. They're the ones that are harmed. The people in the inner city, the people in these urban communities, they're the ones, most of which don't want the cops defunded. They want the same amount, if not more, police. They're the ones who are forced to suffer from the ridiculous ideologies and beliefs of these social justice activists who probably haven't stepped foot in the hood in years. And if they did, they were with a whole bunch of people during a protest, tearing up other communities when they can go back to their homes in the suburbs or wherever they live. Now, I know for a fact, Deray McKesson, last I saw, he ain't broke. So he ain't suffering. I think he lives in Baltimore or somewhere around there. He's profited quite a bit from his social justice movement, from what he does. So I just want to share that with y'all. And I want to give y'all some things to think about. If there was a point that I made or something, if there was a point that I missed, make sure you put it in the comments down below. What do you guys think about this? What would be your response if you saw this post? How would you feel about it? And how do you think this impacts our society as a whole? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me, or do you disagree? Comment down below. In the meantime, stay safe. God bless. Make sure you join the conversation.